Welcome to Leadership and Reinvention, the podcast for leaders on a journey filled with twists, turns, and new possibilities. I'm Marissa Prazen, and along with my co-host Mike Cloutier, in each episode we explore the moments that spark transformation, challenge perspectives, and redefine success. Whether you're making a career shift or looking to lead with impact, this is your space to rethink, pivot, and grow. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone. Marissa and I are thrilled to have you back with us again today or joining us for the first time. Our guest today is very near and dear to my heart. We've been friends and colleagues for a great number of years, and her transformation story, I think, is really exciting. But for me, it begins with a conversation that we had lunch a few years back when Christina, and welcome Christina to the podcast, informed me over lunch. We used to meet a couple times a year, and said that she was going to go back to school and be leaving her career in pharmaceuticals, which was a burgeoning, booming career. She was doing extremely well, and I was both shocked and thrilled simultaneously. So again, Christina, welcome. And why don't you kick us off today by telling us a little bit about your leadership journey to date?
Sure. Thank you. Really happy to be here and talk about this, Mike. And so we met way back at the beginning of the pharmacy and Upjohn and Searle merger. So that was my first job after university, believe it or not. And I have spent 20 years or so in pharma and biotech. And I've also spent the last 10 years in my second career, which is as a registered psychotherapist and small group private practice owner in Ontario. Some might think that those are completely unrelated and a total departure, but they're really not. I mean, just on the other side of the desk now is kind of one way to look at it. It's all still healthcare, and it's all still part of the private market in Ontario. And in terms of a leadership transformation, I would just say it's something that happened slowly over time, really early in my career. I think thanks to probably, company presidents like yourself being able to identify the things that I was good at. I knew how to do my job and do it really, really well because of the things that were my strengths, and to not worry too much about things that were my not strengths. And as the industry changed a lot over the last, that first decade, I slowly began to not be able to do the things that were my strengths. And so, then it's kind of like at that point, are there other jobs, other roles to play? And I think the other part about me is just that never ending, which is annoying sometimes, but desire to learn and understand new things and understand process and operations. When I look back on it now, it seems kind of inevitable that I left when I left, because I read the writing on the wall. Like I knew to get when the getting was good, I think. But I also had something really meaningful to go to. So it was a well thought out plan. One thing that I do well, I think, like you mentioned, we had lunch a couple of times a year. So we were connected at Pharmacia, we were connected at AstraZeneca, but I've always found a way to stay connected to the mentors and the leaders that I know get me and I get them, and to make sure that I have that. So it's like sanity checks, I'm sure every time I met with you, it was some sort of sanity check on my part. And
it certainly wasn't my part, I can tell you that.
Yeah. And here we are, right?
Yeah. And Marissa and I have had tons of sanity check conversations already in our brief history.
Many.
Those are important.
Many. I think anybody who's looking to pivot has lots of sanity checks and with lots of people trying to figure out where they're going. Thank you for sharing the synopsis of the story, but I know there's so much more that we'd love to delve into even deeper. And as Mike said, there are so many people that are looking to what's their next thing, and hence the reason when we started this podcast. And if you were to give advice to somebody looking back on your own experience, what is it, do you believe, that really gave you that courage to take that first step, that leap of faith to get going?
The only thing that allowed me to do that was knowing that there's people that believed in me. Everyone has to feel believed in by at least one person. And it's also the most important thing that leaders can give to people who are looking for leadership, I think. And so you have to know what you're good at. Like I think I didn't say this time, but I'd said in the past, like I didn't have a trade. Like at some point in pharma, the big companies started merging and things were consolidating, and really good people, like people who were great at their jobs, were just getting laid off. And I kind of thought, oh, I'm screwed if that happens to me, because I can't do anything else. I don't know what else I'm good at. And so it became obvious to me I needed to figure out what I was good at. Like, why was it that I could do what I did? Why were some quarters better than others? Like, what was my special sauce, the strength finding kind of piece of it? And I'm really lucky to have had the opportunity to take part in some really cool kind of like assessment things that it wasn't clear to me from school, because I have a lot of interest, and if I study anything long enough, I can kind of figure it out. So it wasn't like, some people are immediately like, oh, I'm amazing at this, or working with my hands. Like, it's not like that for me. So, you got to know what you're good at. You got to get validation from other people who are better than you at that thing also. So you've got to have people to chase. You've got to have a dream to chase. You've got to have, I think, something that means something to you, that you feel like you have something to say about it. And then if there's a business model, well, then you got to figure that out. And I think the thing about me is that I've never been one to think I need to have all the things figured out. Like if there's 10 things to figure out and I have 5, but they're the most important 5 things, I'm okay to go. I love a pilot project, even if it's your career, right? Like you never know sometimes unless you do something how it's going to go. And I'd much rather do that than have analysis paralysis about it. So, having the support of your family is really important. Making sure your partner supports you is really important. They say that's the most important decision anyone ever makes, is who they marry for their career, right? Because they seem unrelated, but they're not unrelated, So, yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, okay. You did. Especially the one, a lot of people that I speak with, they do struggle with that part around figuring out, what is it I'm actually good at? What can I dedicate? What should I dedicate the rest of my career to? And it's not always clear. Would you mentioned a few assessments, but are there any other things, especially given what you do day to day, that you would recommend to people in terms of figuring that out? Any specific steps that you could recommend?
I mean, what I say to young people or new therapists kind of entering the field, sometimes they don't know like who their ideal client is. Like they don't know if they should niche down in a particular part of mental health, for example. And my kind of reflection question is always like, well, who would you see for free? Who lights you up? Like, who's the client that when you see their name in your calendar for the week, you're like really excited to see them and looking forward to it? That's what you want to do. You want to follow the stuff that it brings you joy. It's gratifying. It's important to you. And being good at it, I think, follows that, because if you do the things that light you up, you'll do them more, which is practice. And it's not about being perfect, but practice allows you to have more depth in a skill. And then if it's something the world needs, well, the fact that you practice it so much probably means it does. Like, there's just some logical things for me that follow. And then mentorship is huge around that. So for the people who haven't quite figured it out, I think maybe if you haven't figured it out on your own, you need to talk to people you respect who have figured some stuff out, because if they know you, they can probably tell you what you're good at we don't seek other people's advice enough. Like, we seek the wrong people's advice, not the right people's advice. So I think that's probably what I might say.
Great advice.
Yeah, truly. The mentorship component is really critical in terms of, I know for myself early on, I was blessed with a number of really terrific mentors who were very honest and had the courage to be honest. And as I became comfortable getting feedback that wasn't always warming to my spirit,
Yep.
but nonetheless was really important. I think down the road, it allowed me to try and emulate that in some ways. You touched upon something that I have great curiosity about, because I kind of experienced some of it on my own, but I don't know if people really can appreciate that. As we transform, there are things that we want to take from the past and apply it, and then there's things that we have to leave behind because they just aren't relevant anymore. Mm-hmm. Can you think of some examples of things that have created, you've brought sort of from a continuity perspective, and then things that you left behind, and sort of what that whole process was like?
Like things that from the past that have made me, that I've carried forward, like really intentionally.
Yeah, like even, competencies, capabilities, behaviors, like just things that were, things that continued, and then things were like, that doesn't really work anymore. I now need to shift to this. Were there those moments or that experience?
Yeah. I mean, I guess on the one hand, the blessing of the volatility, if that word, that's kind of a strong word to use maybe, of like what pharma has gone through in the last 20 years has taught me that not to get comfortable with, things being fine, or like that you've figured something out. It's kind of like being a parent too. Like the minute, you think you've figured out this stage, something new happens. So you're always chasing, which I'm comfortable doing already. I think like I'm a systems thinker, right? So, in pharma, it took a little while when I was in big pharma, but in biotech, it really clear, began to understood who the customers were and understanding the role of like different stakeholder groups and regulatory affairs and reimbursement and market access, and how knowledge translation, like really scientific information, like high level, was kind of useless if everyday people didn't understand it. And so I carry that forward in my work. So I'm very aware of like how the intersections between the public and the private healthcare market work, and where they work really well, how they're supposed to work in theory, and where everything falls apart. And so I like to use all that information to both affect change, but also be a good business owner, in that for all the places that the public healthcare system, for example, doesn't help all the people that it tries to, because it's for lots of different reasons, that one of the things I can do is step up and clog that hole in the system by offering a service that the touch point. So I really value the time I'm marking, understanding like the patient pathway and touch points and planning and all of those kinds of things have really helped me plan how I run my business, because I understand where the patients are and where people need help that they're not getting them. And that's nothing that any mental health person at any level learns in their training, right? So that's all systems-based stuff. So I carry that forward every day. Every day I use all of that information. And that's what's allowed us to do some of the things that we've done. Like I think the thing I'm most proud of is our clinic was one of the first in Ontario to ever have an independent functioning nurse practitioner-led diagnostic clinic without physicians, because there weren't any to be had. It's not that we didn't want to have physicians. We love them. There are just not enough of them. And we are able to do that with people who have like upwards of almost 50 years of experience between the three of them, to help people who are out there sitting on wait lists. So there's people with private coverage or means clogging up public wait lists, and because there's no other option for them. So if we pull them out, then all the people on the public wait list get to move up all those spots, right? And the way we launched this program, to me, is like an example of the innovation that I learned how to do starting from the time I was 23 years old, working for you, right?
Happy days.
Those were happy days. Those were happy days. Yeah. Yeah.
I love what you're bringing to the discussion in terms of you taking all these experiences that you've had and now leveraging them to your new business. And I think that's
Totally.
something that we talk about with people, which is, well, if I'm going to pivot into something new, they forget how many of the strengths that they have are completely transferable and able to use in different ways, which may not be obvious from the outset.
Yes. To be clear, that's a realization that's really come to my consciousness, and I would say the last, 3 years. So for the first 7, I would have been like, I was ready to burn it down when I left. Like, I wasn't all like, oh, yay, I've got all these transferable skills that I'm going to carry forward in my new career. So it wasn't as intentional in the beginning.
And what about things that didn't go so well? Can you think of 1 or 2 times where things didn't go as planned and how you got through those?
I would say I read a book that changed my life, and it was a business book, and that was Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux.
Okay.
And that was everything I needed to read. It was everything that I'd been coming to. It was everything that made sense to me. And it was introduced to me actually from former colleagues at Roche, Canada, and their global team. And so I think what I learned then, though, was that there was a lot of things I didn't want to take with me, which was, being completely revenue or profit driven, losing touch with kind of the core reason of why we're doing things that I saw kind of happening that weren't awesome, that I didn't love, that didn't line up to my values. And so part of that was not doing business planning in the pre-specified profit focused or revenue focused way that I had been used to and that I learned how to do it. So not to say not to plan, but I had to figure out what I was planning for because I decided it wasn't going to be revenue driven, which might be a weird thing to say as a business owner, but there was method behind the madness and it worked out. So I would say the hardest part is like shaking free from old ways of doing things when you find yourself falling into similar language or patterns or lingo, and then something hard happens and you're like, oh shit, I'm walking this is the price I'm paying for this way of working that's really different, is that it's going to hurt sometimes. And now I got to keep my big girl pants on and just walk through the fire with people. And then not everyone's like built for that, right? Not everyone's built for walking through the fire. Like some people they need calm and routine and stability and structure. And I don't necessarily offer that in a traditional sense, right? So I think what's been hard has been navigating the people part of it, that you just learn a lot of things about yourself. Like leadership is really hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
You're touching on something that's so important, which is the self-awareness piece. Right. And it's about, I was talking to somebody recently who is also thinking about making a career shift, and she was questioning whether she's the right person to have an entrepreneurial business.
Mm-hmm.
But she's not clear on whether she really wants to stay in the corporate world. And what would you say to someone like that, like who's really going through, like how to go about that? What are the questions to ask yourself in terms of really diagnosing, is this right for me? Or should I maybe, just stay, let's say, in the path I'm in, but choose something slightly different?
I mean, like the basic advice that you would get, that anybody Googling it or asking your buddy Chatty GPT what you should do, is that don't do it alone. You've got to know what you're good at, and you got to outsource all the stuff that you're not good at. Like me and Excel spreadsheets, no thank you. But I have an amazing accountant and other people on my team who are amazing, like freaking the sheets, as we say, right? That's the joke. It's like I let them do that and I'm fine. I have no problem saying I don't have that skill set, right? Because I could do other things that are pretty amazing that other people can't do. So it's like the Simon Sinek rule, 80-20, like 80% of your time you should be working in your strengths. And the 20%, you don't need to focus on getting better at it. You just have to focus on not totally effing it up. But and I also say you got to automate, delegate, and outsource that 20%. And so that's what I do. So the thing that's so hard about owning your own business, as you guys know, is like the relentless worry. So for me, it's like a value of responsibility that never goes away. And it weighs on me. Other entrepreneurs might not necessarily have this problem, but I feel like I'm like responsible for these people all the time. Like everything. At the end of the day, the buck stops with me, like legally, emotionally, psychologically. And I take it a bit too far. It's something like having work boundaries is something I have to work really hard at. But because you can also be an entrepreneur, and if you're successful enough, the quicker you're successful, you can financially pay to have people in the roles that do these other jobs. But for most entrepreneurs, like the first 5 years, you're doing 8 jobs. And so
at least
doing those 8 jobs prevents you from doing the one that's the thing that drives you, that you love. It may not be for you. But if you're someone who can kind of function fairly well, doing at least like 4 or 5 jobs at once, then go for it. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot.
Truly. From personal experience, I always felt that I really and honestly did care about the organizations as small as, I ran a company that was 6 people and one that was, 1,200. Mm-hmm. And I honestly went to work every day believing that it was my responsibility to make sure I did everything I could to protect the jobs. But it really, really hit home when it was mine, or at least I was a material owner.
Yes.
And you hit upon something that I'm curious about, if I could, just related to the things that you perceived that were going to be different, and which of them, came to fruition and which ones didn't. And not so much specifics of it, but more so the journey of realizing that and what did you do about it?
I mean, I think the whole thing is a shock to me. Like, I had no idea. At the beginning, it was just like, so as you mentioned, like I'm leaving this like really successful kind of golden handcuffs, we say sometimes, career in pharma that was steady, it was stable, it was predictable, it was financially rewarding. I didn't have to exert extraneous amounts of emotional labor, mental labor, and like to do my job because I've been doing it for 20 years in some capacity or another, right? Like it's really easy to like ride off into the sunset. So like, why would you walk away from that to start all over again, essentially, right? So what's happened since then, like, so how I went from being one practitioner, because I never intended to start a group. I never envisioned to do what I'm doing now. Like what Dig a Little Deeper is now it's something that's evolved organically over the years. It was never a grand plan. So I think at the beginning, like the thing I was most worried about is like, how am I going to feed my family and pay my mortgage? And I hope my family doesn't hate me for doing this, because it could be great, but it's still just going to be, I still just thought it was going to be me. So I was really just concerned with like replacing my income as the contributor in my family. Right. And so everything that's happened since then is I still wake up and think like whose idea was this? Why is this happening? and it's really, really rewarding, but I could have never planned it. So that's one thing. What was the second part of your question, Mike?
It was really about so when you came to recognize that you thought some things were going to be different, but they were the same, or or thought things were going to be the same, but they're actually different. It was just sort of dealing with that transformation. And I mean, part of it had to have been, just by your example, that you intended to do something radically different and think you were going to do it on your own. And then you ended up evolving it into an organization, right? So that itself must have been like,
I went to this leadership conference once, and I think it was probably in my AstraZeneca days, and Mark Burnett, the creator of Survivor, was there. And he has a really cool story in that, like, you know, when he was shopping Survivor around, he was homeless. Like, he was living on his friends' couches, like couch to couch to couch, like talk about rags to riches story. But one thing he said really stood out to me, which was that piece of like, if you have 5 things figured out, go. Like, don't wait. Like, you just have to go out into the world and try things. And being out in the world trying things involves other people and getting other people's feedback. And there was another study, I think, that I heard years later that was about men and women in business and how they do things differently, obviously from a socialization or culture point of view. But like, men are the ones that will jump with 3 out of 10 things figured out, and women tend to wait until they've got 9 or 10 out of 10 things figured out. And that's the part of me where I was never one of those women. I was always willing to like follow the dream a little bit, because I think I had faith in myself that no matter what, I would land on my feet, because I thought I could always go back to pharma. Like, if I really wanted to, I think I could now if I wanted to, right? Like, because I've stayed friends with people, like I've stayed connected and I have networks. But there was this great article I read once from Harvard Business Review about self-awareness. Marissa, you brought that up before. And it was about the difference between inner and outer self-awareness. And inner self-awareness, just being everything you know about yourself, how you got here, like what you're good at, your story. But outer self-awareness being how other people perceive you, the effect you have on other people, the impact you have on other people. And the only way anyone would ever know that is by asking people. And so I did a lot of that in those years. And so I think that's what allowed me to do what I was doing, but do it in such a like in the moment way rather than a future planning way, which is not how I was trained. I was trained to like plan my life a year in advance, like a marketing or a sales cycle, right? So I've left that behind me. Like, I still plan, but I don't do it, I was saying before, in the revenue focused way that I learned how to do it in pharma.
I'd love to ask you a little bit about this decision to go back to school, because that's a big one. Like you said, you had many years at work, and this is like, you know, a much later stage in your life. And a lot of people find that, quite frankly, intimidating, a big step. And most people say, no way, it's too much of an investment. It's too late. That's what I hear people say. It's too late now to do that. If you could tell us a little bit about what you would say to somebody who says it's too late, given your own experience.
So this is actually, Mike is connected to this decision. So when I did this, I was at Novartis, so I was no longer at a company directly connected to you, Mike, but there was a plenary session at AstraZeneca back when we must have been launching maybe Nexium, Symbicort, maybe just before that. No, it was before that. And you got up and you started talking about people in different capacity levels. I don't know if you remember that or what that was influenced by. It was the first time I had ever heard anybody talk about what people can do in terms of their like cognitive capacity at once. And you kind of said some people have a capacity to do this job. This is the way I understood it. And other people have the ability to have a couple of things going on at once. And it clicked for me at that point. Like, if I don't have enough to occupy this noggin, I'll actually get into trouble. I will take on too much. I'm too interested in too many things, which will make the things that become boring get neglected. And I've known since my early 20s, I have to be very intentional about giving myself things to explore and have hobbies that are interesting. So until that point, things in mental health were like a hobby. Like it was a hobby. It was interesting to me to read about like personality tests or to delve into leadership literature or whatever, all that stuff, right? And then so I kind of thought, because I need a trade, I don't know how to do anything else. If I'm going to, like, should I go to teacher's college? Like, what should I do? Like, what am I going to do if I get laid off one day? Like, a whole lot of nothing is what I felt at the time. So I chose what I chose because I just had an interest in it. But I chose a program that allowed me the ability to do my job still and also keep me intrigued. So it actually added to my capacity. It didn't take away from it. And I think a lot of people choose to study things in school or go back to school because they want to like make money or they're thinking about their careers, but they're not thinking about their interests. And so I did it based on my interest. And that's why I made that decision. But the reason I even thought I should do that is actually because of the breadcrumb trail that Mike started. Right. So
I really want to call something. I really want to call something out here, which is really interesting in hearing you speak, Christina, about your story and your decisions and what drove that. Is I'm hearing a theme of you were really focused on what you were going to gain from all these, call it risks or next steps or things that ideas and things that you pursued, versus often when we're talking to people who are looking at pivots, there's such an emphasis on what I'm going to lose, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to lose all this job. I'm going to lose what I'm doing. I'd love to hear more from, especially from a psychology perspective, what your thoughts are on this, given your expertise.
Well, I mean, I can kind of thank pharma a little bit for that, but I think it's like, so in my business, we talk about that as living and making decisions from like a mindset of abundance versus a mindset of fear. So like fear is anxiety. So it's like, so my own personal temperament is that, I decided as a teenager, I wasn't going to be afraid of things because it annoyed me that there were things that there's something like mental, like a construct that could prevent me from doing something that I wanted. And so I was like, okay, well, what am I afraid of? And it became kind of a to-do list. And that's within reason been kind of like a thing for me, like an operating principle that I'm still going to make like responsible decisions and like risk measured decisions, but I'm not going to not do something just because it's scary at the outset. And so and then the other piece was as I went into business for myself and, it was before the pandemic. So people chose a therapist based usually on like who's in town, who's like geographically close to you. But now post-pandemic, the entire province is my market, if not even a couple of other unregulated provinces, right? And it's everyone's market that's in my position. And so every now and then you hear other therapists getting all wound up about, how many students they're graduating and the market's being flooded and this and that. And I'm kind of like, guys, there's enough mental health problems for everybody. Like this is an abundant market. This problem is not going anywhere anytime soon. And I had to, because it can make you kind of crazy. Like if you're in that fear-based mindset, it's both paralyzing and it shrinks all your possibilities down. And I just never wanted to make decisions from that shrunk down place. And so I don't know if I learned that in pharma or not, or if that's just me, but I really intentionally try to make smart decisions, but from a place of abundance. Like, so whatever risks I'm taking, like financial, like they're not risks that are insurmountable. They're not risks that you can't come back from. Right? Like
that whole concept of a calculated risk, like that, my perspective of the industry was, and I'm not close enough to it today to really know if this is still the same, but it was somewhat risk averse. Like all of the risks seemed to be borne back in the drug discovery and development, and then when the commercial people got to it, we followed a very tried and tested way and approach, and then I think we busted out of that in some of the organizations I was a part of and started making some changes. But the other part was, and you hit on this idea of understanding fear and recognizing it, and then combining it with the risk, calculated or otherwise. And then the third element to me, which I always tried to kind of bring to my kids more than anything, was just own it after. Like, no matter what happens, if it worked great, own it. If it didn't, own it. If you made a mistake, own it. But it's learning. It's just learning, right?
Yeah.
And, I think the thing there was you can recover, and it becomes learning then instead of
everything's recoverable, right?
Right. So it de-risks the fear, but I can appreciate that for a lot of people, those are easy words to say and very hard to live.
It's so hard to do. So I appreciate what you're saying about the own it part, and the therapeutic perspective I can bring to that is sometimes people like don't do a lot of things, or they don't say a lot of things in their relationships for fear of like what the other person will think, or being judged or whatever, or they don't want to disclose like I have ADHD as a leader, and other people are like, oh, should I do that? Like, I'm a healthcare provider. I don't really know if I want to disclose that. I'm like, listen, the one thing I've learned is that once you own it, no one can use it against you. What's someone going to say? Like, oh, you got ADHD? I'm like, yeah, you're right. Next. Like, what? Right? So I think that's a really great message to give people, that you were brave enough to try something. That's amazing. Right? To me, I just see that as such a positive. I don't see that as a negative at all.
It's almost like the harder you press, the more you learn from it, the more you own it. You learn that when you own it, sometimes that's the end of it, right? Sometimes, I've made mistakes that have, quite frankly, ended relationships, and that's the way it happens in business.
Yeah.
And, but others are like, no, it's okay. We're you kind of pull it back. So that's it just really resonated. It's quite powerful. So thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Definitely.
So we've had an opportunity to, ask a lot of questions, and I'm wondering, is there anything that we haven't asked about that you'd like to speak to today?
I think that, like I can't stress enough how important it is to stay connected to people. And in this day and age where people, arguably we should be able to stay easily connected, we don't, or we're connected in ways that aren't as meaningful for us. And when you're venturing out or considering entrepreneurship in particular, like, there's no secret about the mental health toll that the downturn in mental health a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. And a lot of that is due to isolation, right? So you've left behind, like, one thing that an engineer entrepreneur says all the time that I quite like is, like, we leave being employees to start companies where we belong. And then you have this company that you've built for yourself that's about your values and the way you think and the way you operate. And it's wonderful. And it's also not enough because as you know, like, leadership is hard, and you're going to walk the talk now with all the things you poo-pooed in the past. You're going to say, I'm going to do it this way. And then, to your point, it's when the rubber hits the road, it becomes really hard. And you need people around you who see the strengths in you, who know your good intentions, who you do feel understood by, who will also hold you accountable, who will also say, you're doing that thing again, and it's not good. Like, we got to get a handle on this. Because if I wasn't surrounded by people who kept me in line, or if my ego didn't allow me to take direction from people on my team, there's no way I'd still be doing what I'm doing. It would have eaten me alive. And so there's a lot of other people and relationships, psychological safety, accountability, giving people permission to call you out on your shit, I think is really important.
I think that's great advice for anybody not only getting started, but to see, and understand it's going to be an adventure, right? It's a journey of ups and downs, but the rewards, time and time again, are absolutely worth it. Would you What are your thoughts on that?
Me? Yeah, like I totally agree. It's totally, I don't know how I could do anything else, you know? And it's interesting. It's so easy, like with what I've learned now, to look back on all the versions of me that there was like a bud of this, but I couldn't stand up for myself, or I didn't have the language, or I didn't have the words, or I like instinctively knew something, but I couldn't take action. And, I think back to principles of psychological safety is that it's when there's been leaders like you, Mike, and Marissa, I haven't worked for you, but I'm sure you guys are buddies. It's like similar, like the leaders that have had, like there's this balance between humility and being real and being in your position of authority and leadership that I think is really nuanced, and not a lot of leaders are good at it, right? I know for sure Mike's good at it because I saw it really easy. As like a 26-year-old, I saw this, right? And that was a long time ago. And so I think I wasn't as perceptive back then as I am now. So it must have been, I know it was obvious to lots of people and my peers, but, like you've got to be able to be comfortable in your own skin, I think, and lean on people. And that only comes from experience.
And I think it's as genuine. I know, and Mike knows this, because we have a similar philosophy of how do we really bring out as leaders, all of us, right, is the best out of others, the best out of the people around us. And that's when we grow businesses that are thriving, and it goes back to what you just said, all of those ingredients of providing that psychological safety, letting people learn, letting people make mistakes, helping them grow. Also, often seeing the potential in them when maybe they don't see it in themselves, or even if they do, like they're uncertain or scared to take that leap. And if they know somebody has their back, they're willing to do it. And, whether you're in the corporate world or you're building a business of your own with people around you, it's pretty awesome to watch that happen.
Yeah, like identifying, like telling people what you see they're good at seems like an obvious thing to do as a people leader, but I don't know that it happens a lot. And a lot of people, what they're strong at, they don't have to work at. They roll out of bed and they're good at doing it. So they might not realize that that's actually something that is a unique strength. And so for a leader, someone in a position of power to call that out, say, you're really good at this, or I see that you do this, that is so incredibly powerful, especially for young people, especially for like women, I think, it's really huge. And to feel like you have a personal connection. And so like, I don't know if you remember this, like, this is so crazy. And I look back on this, like, I also read a book one day and I was like, I think Mike Kluche would like this book. I freaking packed that book up and I mailed it to you. Like, I was like a GP rep. Like, we had met like twice, like just at plenaries. Like, I mean, like what in the world made me think I could do that, or I should do that, or that you would look at it and read it or anything? Like, that was like a ridiculously ballsy, but I wasn't doing it for to get attention. I was doing it because I genuinely thought, I'm like, oh, this is what he was talking about the last plenary. He's going to love this book. I'm going to send it to him. Like, the thought stopped there. And I was just like, but that was because you created that space of accessibility. Like, the first time I met you was in the lineup for food at my first sales meeting ever. And I didn't know you were the president of the company. You just had a little name tag on that said, "Hi, my name is Mike." I was like, how about this barbecue? Like, it was in Scottsdale. Yeah. And like a lot of us, and we're like, that guy's really cool. We're like, yeah, that's the president. I was like, oh my God. Are you serious? Right? So there's no airs, there's no pretense. You're just like a real comfortable in your skin person who is genuinely interested in people and having a culture that we're all having fun. We're doing serious work. It's hard, but we're here to do this together. Very shoulder to shoulder leadership, which I very much appreciated at the time.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for the kind words. I mean, those were the people who led me when I was 26. When I was coming up, and as well as, that's how my parents occurred, and I actually knew who you were because I knew your mom, because
Right.
she had actually done training for us.
Yes.
As a physician, she used to come in, and so I recall when you were hired. But I think that so for me, sorry, but as a leader, that's what I remembered. And it started to dawn on me. And it was examples like yours with the book and many others where people, would send things, or sometimes it'd be an email or whatever, but there'd be people would reach out.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And I thought, oh my God, that's so powerful. It's powerful for me.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could create an environment where people felt comfortable to do that, oh my God. So when I went into leadership training for a short little stint and tried to make money at it, which I hated.
Oh, really?
Because I loved doing it, but I didn't want to do it as a business.
Right.
I like doing it.
Yes.
I
I'm
want
with
to make
you.
money
I'm with
this
you
way,
on that for sure.
right? So I got away from that, but I still do it and love it. But anyway, it reminded me that I was learning so much from my people. It was 100-fold compared to what I was giving, because there were so many of them who were so talented and so great. And if I could just absorb, if I got one thing from each of them, that was 100 things.
Yeah.
I can only give so much.
Yeah, it's like the end user's opinion is the most important. Like, I think that's the thing I learned as I got more and more specialized in pharma, is that it's not like actually what the physician thought. I wanted to know what their patients were saying and what their patients were experiencing and what the process was like for their patients. And that's how I figured out what to do and how to build my plan. And even now, I think the reason why I can't say I started this company with some giant grand plan to do what we're doing is because I've learned everything I've learned from all of our patients and clients along the way. They've informed what's important and what I should do next in my position of privilege to be able to affect something in this province. And if it's not going to help them, why would I do it? There's no point, right? And so if I can find the process for them that exists in the system that they don't know about and direct them towards it, I do that. But if it doesn't exist, or there's practical barriers, or it doesn't make sense for whatever reason, then I can make it. Right? That's my trade. So that's how I figure that out.
Look, so greatly appreciate the time today. And just before we wrap up, because we've taken so much of your time, Marissa, any additional questions or thoughts for today?
Well, I just want to say a big thank you. And you're such an inspiration, Christina. I can't wait for everyone to hear your story, because it's just so rich in terms of everything that you've encountered in your journey. And most of all, what I'm taking away from this conversation is just really believing in yourself and having the courage to go for it. And I love that. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Marissa. Thanks for inviting me. This is really lovely. I really appreciate it.
Well, it was our absolute pleasure. And again, thank you for your time today. I have been blessed to meet a lot of really tremendous people over the years, and count you at the very top of the list of people that I enjoyed working with, got to get to know professionally, and consider a very dear friend. And I cannot wait to be back home in the summer and get together for lunch and hearing about the next level of adventures and the things you'll be doing. So again, thanks for your time today, and thanks for everyone who's joined in to see us today, and we'll look forward to continuing these discussions and dialogue as we go. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.